Thank you very much. You have 7 minutes, and we welcome your
Right.
presentation.
All right. I'd like to thank you for providing me with the opportunity to present a brief to your committee. My name is Lorne Trottier. I'm the co-founder of Vatrox, which makes specialized computer graphics and video hardware for a variety of commercial and industrial applications. Just to give a couple of examples, our graphics cards are used to drive multiple display screens that are used in industrial control rooms. And our video products are used in the production of television programs. Now, through my connection with Dr. Joe Schwartz of McGill's Office of Science and Society, I've developed an interest in both science outreach, that is explaining science to the public, and also in combating the many kinds of pseudoscience. About 5 years ago, Dr. Schwartz asked me to take up the issue of public concern over wireless technology, since this is somewhat closer to my field of electronics. I've found over these last years that there are many parallels between the anti-Wi-Fi movement and other pseudoscientific groups, such as the anti-vaccine movement. There is a huge amount of misinformation on the internet on these issues that is promulgated by activist groups. So I was inspired by the example set by some courageous and scientifically minded parents who had established blogs to counter the hysteria alleging that autism was caused by childhood vaccines. This hysteria has caused vaccination rates to fall and dangerous infectious diseases to reappear. As a result of this example, I kind of decided to establish a website called emfandhealth.com dedicated to presenting the findings of mainstream science on this issue. As with vaccines, the overwhelming preponderance of evidence is that EMF, within established guidelines, does not cause any harmful health effects. As this committee is no doubt aware, there have been dozens of expert reviews of the scientific literature by the health organizations of most of the countries of the industrialized world. It also includes Health Canada. Our website provides links to many of these expert reviews, which are virtually unanimous in concluding that there is no evidence of harm from health effects within the established guidelines. Now, activists, many of whom we've heard from today, like to point to a minority of scientists, including people like Martin Blank, that we heard from today, who take issue with the mainstream consensus. These activists cherry-pick a number of poor quality and often discredited studies with so-called positive findings to support their alarmist views. They ignore the much higher quality negative studies. The activists do not understand the process by which health agencies such as Health Canada conduct expert reviews. The World Health Organization has published guidelines on this process, and I quote, "All studies with either positive or negative effects need to be evaluated and judged on their own merit, and then altogether in a weight of evidence approach. It is important to determine how much a set of evidence changes the probability that exposure causes an outcome. Generally, studies must be replicated or be in agreement with similar studies. The evidence for an effect is further strengthened if the results from different types of studies point in the same direction." End quote from the World Health Organization. Now, our website has analyzed a number of the studies that are most promoted by the activists. We have found very serious flaws in all the ones that we've examined. I have a few examples that I'd like to mention. One is concerning the installation of a cellular base station, which in this case was in Oakville, Ontario, and the activists there were quoting a study from Brazil that purported to show that there was 35% more deaths from cancer within a 500-year radius closest to the station. Our analysis, which is published on our website, showed a number of major flaws in this study. For instance, the population of the city was not age-adjusted. and there was a high concentration of base stations in the downtown core of the city where the study was done. There is substantive evidence that this area in downtown has a much higher proportion of older residents. Cancer deaths are much higher in older people. It is this simple fact that can account for the higher proportion of cancer deaths, not proximity to a base station. Activists also misinterpret the IARC classification of cell phones as a possible carcinogen, a finding that was based on a couple of weak and contradictory epidemiologic studies. They failed to note that coffee and pickled vegetables have the same classification. They also failed to note that this weak evidence has since been substantially undermined. A number of recent papers note that the incidence of brain cancer has been constant for the past 25 years. This hard data flatly contradicts predictions made using the weak epidemiological evidence. How can the 5 billion active cell phones in use be causing brain cancer if there has been no change in the incidence of this rare disease? The World Health Organization issued a fact sheet immediately after the IARC ruling stating, quote, "To date, no adverse health effects have been established as being caused by mobile phone use." Then there is the issue of so-called electro-hypersensitivity, which we heard a lot about this morning. Activists ignore the fact that virtually all of the properly conducted double-blind studies have found that self-proclaimed electrosensitives cannot detect the presence of EMF. Here again, they cherry-pick poor-quality studies. Dr. Magda Havas is one of Canada's leading activists. She has conducted studies which purport to find that the heart rate of certain individuals can suddenly double in the presence of EMF. We were invited to repeat these experiments under the supervision of one of Montreal's leading cardiologists. She has refused while making the false and outlandish claim, quote, "You, meaning me, are trying to protect yourself from possible legal action. You have provided McGill University with wireless technology and do not want to be blamed for adverse health effects that may result from that exposure," end quote. So this is another standard tactic that is shared by anti-Wi-Fi and anti-vaccine activists, as well as other science deniers. They accuse all those who oppose their views of having a conflict of interest. They hold the paranoid and conspiratorial theory that the majority of mainstream research in this field, most of the world's health organizations, including Health Canada, and even members of this commission, have somehow been bought out by the telecom industry. This is outrageous, defamatory nonsense. I trust that this commission will base its conclusion on the findings of mainstream peer-reviewed science. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trottier. Any comments? Thank you very much for your presentation. There are no comments.
Thank you.